Joining me now is Randall Blazak. He's the chairman of the Oregon Coalition Against Hate Crime. He's also a professor at the University of Oregon, and we're glad to have you here, especially as you have been dealing and trying to study what leads to these kinds of incidents. Your work makes clear that these kinds of massacres should not be viewed in isolation, right? That this is part of online extremist, radicalized people who are in these communities. They're fueled by hate. What insight do you have on how specifically these video game platforms are now being leveraged to spread hate and racist ideology?
Yeah, I hate to say this is a textbook case, but it kind of follows a lot of the markers of some of the mass shootings that we've seen that have been racially motivated in the past, including in El Paso, Texas, and Christchurch, New Zealand. And there is an increasing utilization, not just of social media and the deep web and the dark web and all the kind of the dark corners of the internet where we would find white supremacy, but gaming platforms, because gaming platforms are where young males occupy space. It's where it's able to reach them and to kind of pull them into that world, and where they're able to communicate and then push out their own activity. And so we've really seen these gaming platforms become sort of the main currency among the younger elements of the extreme right-wing movement.
This is incredibly disturbing, and when you see these young men, mostly white, aspiring to be these mass shooters, literally, they aspire to this. You also say that they are practicing this gamification, as you call it. What does that entail? I mean, you gave us a little bit of insight there, but what is going on online?
Yeah, there is this larger rhetoric that there is a coming apocalypse or a coming race war, or coming civil war, and building up to that, there is an effort to sort of raise the stakes. We saw this in 2011 with the shooting and the bombing in Oslo, Norway, that killed 77 people. Christchurch, El Paso, they keep trying to kind of outdo each other's body counts as a way of almost playing a video game in the real world, except the victims are people of color and people who are seen to be the enemies of the white race. And to them, there are just these scores. So these body counts are just sort of scores to compete with each other. But the reality, of course, is the incredible amount of trauma that goes out through communities who have to deal with this yet again, where these young men feel like this violence is going to towards some end goal, some race war that they think is going to save them. But in reality, there are just incredible amounts of people who have been harmed by this thinking.
What's intriguing here is that you are working with the U.S. government, right, to try and do something about this. Describe your project to us and how you're trying to engage these young men online, so that, as you describe it, you really take them off the edge of the cliff and pull them back into reality.
Yeah, we're working on a federally funded grant here in Portland that looks at ways of interrupting and de-escalating the violence. And we know the solution isn't going to come from the government, it doesn't come from law enforcement or professors like me. It comes from within communities, within the communities where these people who are at risk of committing violence live and make plans and post online. We know that 80% of the violent terrorist attacks that have been broken up within the United States have been done because people close to the people who were planning the attacks interjected themselves with the people who were escalating towards violence, talked to authorities, and really sort of prevented those things from happening. So we're really looking at taking what we call credible messengers, people that are believable to the people who are escalating towards violence, to kind of talk them back off that ledge, to say, hey, there's another way. You've got this grievance, you've got this, thing that you're angry about. Let's find a non-violent way for you to articulate that doesn't end up with, people bleeding in a grocery store and you spending the rest of your life in prison.
And I guess it is important, obviously, to figure out what is amplifying as well those positions of hate that they tend to get more and more enamored by as they're in these online platforms. Randall Blazak, some really good insight there to help us understand this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, Taiwan.